When it comes to the Buffalo Bills offense, what's working and what's not? I'm joined by Nate Geary to break it all down today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Thursday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. And as a reminder to you, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Bills is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Well, folks, the Bills are at the bye, and I said we're going to do a little self-scouting. Yesterday, we talked Josh Allen and special teams and the schedule ahead, and today we are going to laser in on this Buffalo Bills offense, and I'm joined by Nate Geary of WGR 550. Nate, I think this is 3 or 4 years in a row now. Thanks again for making yourself available during the Bills bye week.
I think you might have to start bringing in the Jim Nantz Masters theme, a tradition like no other. Nate Geary during the bye week. Think about it for next year.
Okay, well, I've got a good solid year to think about that, and I think the Masters, your golf situation, it makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you what, I'm excited to talk to you because I don't think we've talked that much this season.
No, not too much.
So, I mean, I keep up with some of your tweets, and obviously you've got some bad takes out there. So we can work through those. But I'm anxious to kind of touch base with you on this Bills offense. The way we're going to do this is we're going to start by talking passing offense. And the idea is going to be, hey, what's working, what's not working? Then we're going to do rushing offense. Then we're going to get into some situational type stuff and even some big picture stuff with all the buzzy conversations out there about Christian McCaffrey and Odell Beckham Jr. So let's start with the passing offense. Yeah. Nate, this is the number one passing offense in the league, right? I mean, it is humming. It is doing well. It shouldn't be too hard for us to get into the what's working piece of this conversation, but I'll let you lead off with your thoughts on what's working and why the Bills passing offense has been so effective.
Well, the first thing I'm going to put in there is something I know they cared a lot about. I know Josh Allen goes into every offseason, talk about self-scouting. Right now, in terms of why Josh Allen is who the player that he is, why he's so effective, why he's so darn good, is, and frankly, the Bills organization as a whole, very good, very self-aware. They understand their weaknesses, and they do everything they can every offseason to address those weaknesses and try to turn them from weaknesses, maybe not to strengths, but just not a weakness for the team. And I think the one area you could look at in this passing game right now, and one of the things that has gone much better this year, yards after catch. Yeah. It was a big topic of discussion going into the year. They were, bottom 5, bottom 4 in the league last year in yards after catch. I mean, heck, they got more yards after catch in that Pittsburgh Steelers game than they probably did all of last season. So yards after catch, Josh Allen leading his receivers, giving them opportunities to get those yards after the catch. The deep game is maybe more effective than it ever has been before. And it's not to knock them for not having a good deep passing attack last year. I thought they did. But Gabriel Davis is really starting to take the step into elite level downfield passing weapon. And, will he ever be, a number one full route tree type of guy in the NFL? I'm certain someone would pay him to do it. Mm-hmm. I'm not so certain that would be the best role, most successful role for Gabriel Davis. Where he is in Buffalo in this style of offense with this quarterback, with Stephon Diggs as wide receiver 1, I think you've seen a situation, a scheme, and just overall a fit in this offense that's unique to him and his skill set. And good on Ken Dorsey for building on some of the things that he had, sort of adopted and took over from Brian Daboll. But I think building out the deep game with Gabriel Davis has been something that I've noticed really well that they've done better this year. The other thing I think that's working, Joe, is, man, they are featuring Stephon Diggs in a way that I think I know I found myself sort of asking for last season after 127 catch season in his first year with the Bills. It's not that he was worse last year. I think he was just featured less. I think they used sometimes, and we'll talk about this in the situational football segment of this podcast, but they used at times last year and in 2020 Cole Beasley as almost a crutch in this passing game, and it almost became, when in doubt, throw to Beasley. And I think that his limitations as a yards after catch guy, his limitations as a guy as a weapon, especially your zero blitzes, right? Last year, the zero blitz response, throw the ball to Beasley. Quick, get rid of the ball, get it out of your hand, get it to Beasley. And Beasley did not really offer a lot of yards after catch ability. He wasn't a one move, get north-south, right? The move from having him as your primary cover zero blitz bailout has moved to Stephon Diggs as your primary cover zero blitz bailout. And I think that move has helped this offense along, has made them more effective on third down. Obviously, the number one third down team in football. But it's also moving him around and having him play from the slot, and I love what they're doing, stacking receivers. I mean, the things they're able to disguise when they're stacking Gabe Davis, or they're stacking Khalil Shakir or Isaiah McKenzie, or in some cases, Dawson Knox and Stephon Diggs. So I like the way that Dorsey is really setting things up and stacking wide receivers and forcing defenses to sort of give up what coverages they're running. And then secondarily, the RPO game. I think it's taken another step this year, and I think that RPO game has a lot to do with using Stephon Diggs in a lot of the ways they were using Cole Beasley in that RPO game, that short passing game, right around the line of scrimmage, the slip screens, the slot screens, the bubble screens. They're moving all of that stuff into the sort of repertoire of Stephon Diggs, and I think it's one of the biggest reasons this offense has taken so many strides in a passing game that was already really good, but now I think is eclipsing really elite level play.
I love having you on this show, and I love having guests from time to time because I learn things and I gain different perspective. And something you said there is something I had not previously considered, and it was kind of the crutch that has been Cole Beasley. I don't think you look back at the tenure of Cole Beasley and really have any disappointment at all. I think he's meant a lot for the football team, but I think there is something to be said for your point there about how it has maybe funneled more targets to Diggs and more short motion and even more slot reps from Diggs. Yep. And that's a good thing. You want all the digs that you can get from Josh Allen because good things happen when that duo is humming. And so I really appreciate that point there. And I love what you said about yards after catch. I never expected Josh Allen to be top 10 in yards after catch. I just didn't want to be the worst anymore.
That's right.
And right now he's at 5.2 yards after catch per reception, which is almost a full yard more than last year. And that's a lot of production that they're getting because of that. And so I do love that talking point that you brought up as well. I have three things down here, Nate. The first thing is Josh Allen throwing the football to Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. That's working, right? That's pretty obvious. And I think it's fair to say that the Bills haven't had this 1-2 punch yet, right? I know that they had Steph Diggs and Emmanuel Sanders. They had John Brown, right? But it's Gabe at this level, healthy Gabe, right? Not one ankle Gabe, is a different beast opposite of Steph. And that's working, right? Very, very obvious. I don't have to spend a lot of time there. That's working. Number two is the vertical passing game. Josh Allen is the best vertical thrower in the NFL right now, and it's not close. He's got 100 more yards than the number 2 quarterback in the league on targets 20 plus down the field. And he's just blowing away
the accuracy, right? And the accuracy, dude. Joe. It's the one of the things I talked about last year is his ability to throw with all three planes, right? He can throw the bullet, he can throw the loft pass, and he can throw the bucket pass. Yep. To me, the development in the third one, the ladder, that bucket pass, has been so unbelievable. In my opinion, Joe, it's not exactly an acquirable trait. It's not something that guys just all of a sudden can pick up. He has gotten better little by little by little. I'm wondering why we haven't heard more quarterbacks talk about the charting that Josh Allen did after his rookie season, learning the hitch in his throw, becoming a more efficient thrower. He's one of the quickest releases in the league now, coming from a guy that really had, he didn't have like the Andre Woodson thing or anything where he's coming all the way around.
Hammering the ball over the top. Right?
Yeah. And I keep going back to Tim Tebow, right? Because I was a big Tim Tebow fan back in the day, but all we ever heard with him was there's too much muscle memory. You have years and years of things to reverse.
Yep.
Well, what's the difference with Josh Allen? I think he's just such a raw athlete, and he was so raw in a lot of the technical parts of his game. But more so, Joe, he was intrigued. He was interested in understanding the mechanics, the math, the physics behind it. And when you have a quarterback that asks why, then you start to find things about your game. You start to better understand the mechanics and how to switch them. And then you have the guy that asks why, but then that's willing to put in the work to ask the question and then to figure out the result, to figure out the answer. That to me has been the biggest thing with Josh Allen is it's year to year. You see his game continue to take steps. I heard you this morning on GR, right? And the thing we talked about that I heard you guys talking about on GR this morning is like his growth year over year and him becoming one of the best downfield passers in football. It's not by accident. I mean, this is years of work. This is years in the making. But it's those asking why. It's that charting and understanding that if he tilts his shoulders at a more severe angle instead of being so flat, that he can better manipulate the trajectory of the football and little things like that. You maybe don't have quarterbacks around the league asking those questions and seeking out those answers.
Yeah, the interview with Chris Sims was phenomenal to kind of gain some additional perspective there recently. Just the nuances of, hey, I set to throw left and I adjust to throw right, and the hop step that he's incorporated. I mean, just unprecedented stuff and really phenomenal growth. And yes, all credit to Josh Allen. The last thing that I have written down here, Nate, and I'm surprised neither one of us have mentioned it yet, but one of the key things that's working about the passing offense is the pass protection. It's been phenomenal this year. Josh Allen, on a percentage basis, in terms of percentage of dropbacks where he faces pressure, last in the NFL, right? That he faces the least amount of pressure. And of course, Josh Allen is the best at not allowing pressure to turn into sacks. And so his 106.5 passer rating under pressure this year is just off the charts, right? Like there's usually a huge drop off there. Every week I preach about pressure and how it affects quarterbacks, not Josh Allen this year. And so he's handling pressure extremely well, but he's also not facing a ton of it. And so I think we have to make sure we mention that in the what's working piece of this passing offense. Nate, let's flip it over to the other side of things. What's not working for the passing offense? And I'll start here. I have two things written down, and then I'll kick it over to you. The first thing that's not working is James Cook's involvement. Okay, the Bills are throwing the football to running backs probably better than they ever have, if you include kind of the Reggie Gilliam stuff and Devin Singletary and what he's meant. But this was supposed to be about James Cook, right? And him being this multifaceted, out of the backfield, put him in the slot, have him run routes, do all this stuff. That hadn't happened yet. I think he has 4 catches, Nate, in 6 games.
Crazy.
You know, and the thing about it is, it's not like you're sitting here screaming for opportunity. The opportunity that he's gotten, it hasn't looked good, right? Like it looks like he's just not comfortable yet. And these 6 games don't define James Cook's career. But this was obviously a piece of this offense that they wanted when you consider the J.D. McKissic stuff and then investing in a running back that really isn't a do-everything guy in the second round, right? That's a pretty high pick for a guy that really doesn't offer much between the tackles, that doesn't offer much in pass pro, right? He's not a multifaceted do-everything back. And so that layer to the passing game hasn't been there. The other thing that I'll mention here before I kick it over to you, Nate, is, and I hate to say it, but consistency at wide receiver outside of the top 2. Like it is Gabe Davis, it is Stephon Diggs, and then what else has been reliable? It hadn't been Isaiah McKenzie. I mean, Khalil Shakir.
It wasn't Crowder either.
Wasn't Crowder. Khalil Shakir's kind of working his way into it. I mean, Jay Kumaro was actually pretty good before the ankle injury. But I think it's fair to say that the Bills have options, but none of them has become that number 3 or become that number 4.
Yeah, and I love your point about running backs. I was going to kind of bring that up as maybe a hybrid of what is working and I think sometimes what's not working. And, you know, I think what you want is you want more than what you are given with Devin Singletary as a yards after catch guy when he catches the football. There's just a desire for more. And I think for me, that's the biggest reason that, you know, we're going to have a conversation about Chris McCaffrey after this. And it's not because Devin Singletary is not an effective player when he's on the field. They trust him. Talk about pass protection. I think one of the big reasons he's averaging, 80% of the plays over the last couple of weeks is how much better he has become as a pass blocker, as a guy that can stay in there and put up a fight against linebackers, can put up a fight against free rushers. And I think that's been a nice aspect of his game that has grown over the course of his 4 seasons. But if I were to say something that's to me not working, Joe, is featuring more of Dawson Knox. This is a position, the tight end position, that I think it was and has been incredibly important for Josh Allen in his development. And obviously, you know, the team values him. They extended him to big bucks when, I mean, I'd been kind of hoping and calling for this extension to happen, but I wasn't exactly overly confident that Dawson Knox was going to be a long-term answer for the position, simply because of the sort of the marching orders and the line of guys still that are left on this roster to get re-signed. And I wondered, you know, with Diggs and I think a desire to keep Davis here long-term, would there be room for Dawson Knox under, you know, the salary cap? But he was the first guy they really went out and decided that in this core group of offensive players, short of Stephon Diggs, that was the guy they wanted to extend. They just have yet to really find a way to feature him in a way that I think are more obvious. And instead of dumping down the football on third down to Devin Singletary, right? Like, where can we get the screen game involved with maybe Dawson Knox? I look at how the Kansas City Chiefs deploy Travis Kelce. Now, I'm not living in a fantasy world. I know Dawson Knox is not Travis Kelce, but there are things that I think Dawson Knox can do athletically that I'm not sure Travis Kelce is nimble enough, is quick enough in short area spaces to do what Dawson Knox does. So I would like them to lean more into the athleticism, the yards after catch ability that Dawson Knox provides. Now, part of this, Joe, is they faced a couple of teams with a couple of really good defensive lines, and he's been asked to be a secondary blocker. He's been asked to be the sixth guy, the sixth offensive lineman in a lot of cases. And the growth I've seen from Dawson Knox as a blocker can't be overstated. Having said that, you don't pay a guy what they pay Dawson Knox to be a sixth offensive lineman. You pay him because he's the third piece of this passing offense. And frankly, I thought he stood to stand in line for more targets of those Beasley targets that were left over than just about anybody else. And that has not been the case for the first 6 weeks. I would be, if I was a betting man, I would bet that coming out of the bye week, there's going to be more emphasis in finding the secondary, that 10 to 15 yard area of the field behind the linebackers in those Tampa 2 coverages. Everyone talks about running the football to get teams out of the two-man safety look. Listen, I think if there's one team that wants to get teams out of the two-man safety look, it's the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert has yet to evolve and figure out how to beat that consistently. The Bills have figured out how to beat it consistently. The Bills aren't asking teams to get out of two high safeties now. The Bills are baiting you. The Bills are saying, you want to stay in two high safety? We've got plays. We've got evolution in this offense to beat you if you want to sit back and do that. And I think that's where, you know, the next great crop of young quarterbacks, they're going to get to Josh Allen. If they're going to get to Patrick Mahomes' level, they're going to have to beat teams in the two high safety look. And I think a big evolution of this offense for the rest of the year has to be integrating Dawson Knox in a more meaningful way.
I think it's a really good point. I think part of that, like you said, has been kind of keeping him in the block. Also, Dawson having some injuries that he's been playing through. But
Sure.
I think specifically on dealing with the blitz, I think the Bills have been kind of in a crossroads of, do they want to throw hot or they want to protect, right? And I think that's something that they're going to ask themselves questions about this week and start to come up with a more consistent plan on how to handle the blitz. Josh hasn't been bad against the blitz, but I think it's an area where there's some meat on the bone and where, whether it's been the Baltimore game or even Kansas City, Miami at times, some of those blitzes they've been very hit or miss. Now, Josh has feasted a little bit off of that, but I think the lack of a true plan for throwing hot versus protecting has led to a little bit of inconsistency there. You also mentioned the contract that Dawson Knox has, and we're both advocates for him getting paid what he got paid. But there's a bigger question to ask about the long-term situation here, and I think we have also understood the value of Gabriel Davis to this offense. And just look at it right now. I mean, it's phenomenal. The team needs Gabe. But then you start to ask yourself questions about what his contract's going to be. And if Mike Williams can get $20 million a season, Nate, Gabe's getting 20, right? If he's on this trajectory. And so now you start to say, well, Steph Diggs is getting 25. Dawson Knox is getting 14. Gabe's getting at least 20. You got a $45 million quarterback. I mean, Brandon Beane, you get paid the big bucks, brother, but that's a lot to figure out, man.
Yeah.
That is a lot to figure out.
And by the way, I know this is an offensive podcast, but I think that Tremaine Edmonds has given every reason for this franchise to believe that he's a guy that deserves something here long term. And obviously the questions persist around Jordan Poyer and Ed Oliver. I mean, there's a laundry. This is this is a phase, Joe, that Bills fans are unfamiliar with. This is uncharted territory for Bills fans. Like, yes, it's great to say draft, develop, retain, right? That's a mantra that 32 teams share.
Yeah.
Very few of them get to the retain part because the development process either gets log jammed or coaches aren't around it long enough and they move
100%.
on. They want their own guys, so it's easy to move off of guys. Right now, the Bills have the continuity, the development process, the coaching all in place that they're getting the most out of guys that they draft. Even in the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth rounds, they're getting guys now that, Dawson Knox, third round pick. You're looking at Gabriel Davis, fourth round pick. I mean, these are guys now that are later in the draft that are turning around and getting, top 20% money at their position. That's a problem this franchise has not really had in the salary cap era.
Yeah, Matt Milano, Taron Johnson, Ryan Bates.
Those look like
right.
I mean, oh my God, Taron Johnson's deal.
Yeah,
it looks like an absolute beauty right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they have some deals that look really, really good in hindsight. They're going to look even better a year from now.
We're going to talk about the rushing offense here in just a moment. But first, whether you're looking to pop the question, have a milestone to celebrate, or want to let your love sparkle, Blue Nile can help you make your celebrations even more memorable. As the original online jeweler, Blue Nile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. Blue Nile has helped millions of couples create their perfect engagement ring. Their easy online tools let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as the setting style. If you're looking for a piece of fine jewelry to commemorate a special milestone but are still having trouble choosing, don't worry. Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Shop stress-free with Blue Nile's 100% satisfaction guarantee. All Blue Nile orders are insured and shipped for free in discreet packaging. They also offer overnight shipping if you're in a rush. Make your moment sparkle with Blue Nile. Go to BlueNile.com and use code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BlueNile.com. Locked On to save $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com, code Locked On. All right, Nate, let's talk rushing offense here. The Bills are 20th right now in the league in rushing yards. They're 16th in yards per carry at 4.8. But I do want to kind of bring to the forefront here the running back production running the football. We know about Josh Allen, what he brings and how he inflates some of those numbers. When you factor in just running backs, and not just Bills running backs, every team's running backs only running the football, the Bills are 26th in the league. They have just 93 carries, 244 yards, or 344 yards. Not a ton of production there from the actual Bills running back. So I'll give you the floor here. Let's talk about the good. What's working with this Bills rushing offense?
Stop me if you heard this before. Pin and pull. It is their bread and butter running scheme. They run it better than a lot of teams, considering I think Mitch Morse might be one of the most athletic, unique centers in football. So glad that he's been able to stay healthy. There was a lot of concern about a lot of the head injuries that he sustained early in his career, and he's been nothing but a linchpin for this offensive line. And I think he's a big reason why the pin and pull works so effectively. I think right now, outside of that, the RPO game continues to be a really big staple in this offense. Maybe not as dramatic as, say like Miami or some of these teams that really rely almost solely on the RPO game and its effectiveness. But I think with Devin Singletary, the things you see is between the tackles. He is as nifty and as crafty of a between the tackles runner in the league. He's not a power back and he's not a speed back. But what he does is he runs with a ton of nuance. He's a guy that simply does not go down on first contact. And I think he does a great job of following his blocks. And right now you do see that obviously I think there's a lot to be desired right now at the guard position with Roger Saffold and Ryan Bates. I don't think that the move to right guard has been a particularly, bountiful one for Bates. I liked him a little bit more at the left guard position. So we'll see if the answer more long-term is getting him back to play that left guard position and finding a more long-term answer at right guard. But in my opinion right now, it's pin and pull or nothing. And I think that is a little bit of a disappointment for me, because I think a lot of the big thing you were hoping with Aaron Kromer is the opening up of the outside zone running game. And obviously the excitement around James Cook and an outside zone running style. And that just has not really come to fruition yet. So right now I think it's easy. What's working is not a whole lot. But what they do well, I think that they do pretty darn well. The problem is it has become such a staple for them offensively that teams are looking to take that away. Teams are looking to get aggressive. They have no semblance of a trap game, no semblance of a counter game. It is truly, pin and pull or die. And that's, I'm sure something we'll get into here is for the things not working.
Nate, I kind of botched that statistic at the front, so let me get a chance to redeem myself here. The Bills running backs and running backs only have 93 rushes for 444 yards. That is the least amount of attempts, and it is 26th in yards. They only have one rushing touchdown. That's of course tied for last. And so the Bills' rushing production with their running backs is, bottom tier in the NFL. And I think that's okay when you consider the passing offense, but you want it to be more consistent. And so when I think about what's working for the Bills rushing the football, Josh Allen, okay, all right, we'll move on. That's quick and easy. I think Devin Singletary's running the football well based on his skill set. I'm fully satisfied with his rushing efforts and what's available to him. And then if I had one more thing that is working, that's going to kind of lead into what's not working, gap runs. Gap runs are working, Nate. And this is something that we talked about last year because the Bills' rushing offense came to life later in the season, kind of that back 6 games, because they were willing to kind of lean more into the gap runs and not try to be this multifaceted rushing offense where you do a little bit of everything. And they went into this year with this big expectation of wide zone rushing and James Cook having a role. But then you have James Cook not really coming to fruition, like you said. You have an offensive line that was banged up pretty much the entire training camp and preseason together. Yep. And that's communication. You're not blocking a man, you're blocking an area. There's timing and communication that goes with that. And so I think all of that has led to the zone rushing not really becoming effective. But then if you go back and you ask yourself, what game did the Bills rush the football the best? It's Kansas City. No question about it. Well. Let's talk about what they did against Kansas City. They ran gap. They had 11 gap runs versus 5 zone runs from Devin Singletary in that game. Before that, for the 5 games combined, 18 zone runs, 19 gap runs. You finally really tilted it towards the gap runs. Eventually, at some point, you have to just acknowledge that this is your best way to run the football. And so while the zone stuff hasn't been there, and I think there's a reason for it, and I don't think that they're lacking scheme or they're lacking coaching acumen. I don't even think they're lacking talent. It just hasn't come together. But the gap stuff is working, and I think they have to lean into that and kind of get rid of the romanticization of the wide zone being the staple of this rushing attack.
It's definitely not the staple. And I talked to Eric Wood about this a little bit, and what Eric was maybe most excited about with James Cook is not in the traditional way you think of an outside zone. Like I'm going to beat that outside linebacker to this spot at the edge. Bye. To him, it was way more about the cutback ability. And, one of the things when LaShawn McCoy was here, and he was telling me the story that, when Aaron Kromer was here originally and LaShawn McCoy, what they talked about was LaShawn's ability to just feel when backside opportunities were open to him and using that zone rushing, that outside zone, really to hit those cutback lanes was where they felt they were going to be the most dangerous as a running attack. And, they just have not found the way to do it traditionally, and they certainly have not been able to find those cutback lanes. And frankly, I don't think they have the foot speed at the running back position outside of James Cook to hit those cutback lanes effectively and use them in the same way the San Francisco 49ers do, right? Like the Jeff Wilsons of the world, who, is a very underrated running back because his foot speed, because of his vision and his ability to get in those cutback lanes and utilize what the Shanahan offense is built on, which is those zone cutback lanes. And I know we're going to romanticize about it and fantasize about the ability to do it, but eventually you kind of just have to say a duck is a duck. It's not a chicken. It's not a bird of flight. It's a duck, and you can't run zone. And I think they're understanding that about themselves. And, listen, I think the biggest disappointment to me about this running game, Joe, is Zach Moss. It's been a big, giant disappointment to me. And I tried to be understanding in this and not be overbearing about it, because every time he got in the field, I just felt like I was going, like again. And I hate feeling that way. It's a guy that's earning a living. It's a guy that was drafted in the 3rd round and was a hell of a football player at the University of Utah. I don't know where it's gone, Joe, but he's not an NFL running back.
Why don't you be honest about it, Nate? Yeah,
you brought me on for the honesty and hot takes, Joe.
Yeah. I expect nothing less, and that's what I want to do every time I do a podcast. My emphasis that I tell myself is that I want to tell people how I feel and be honest about it and be authentic. Right. And so I appreciate you doing that. For me, what's not working, which is going to kind of bleed into some of the stuff that you talked about and carry over some of my points from what is working. And the first thing I have written down is literally running backs not named Devin Singletary, right? It's cut and dry. Nate, I wonder if the second best running back on this team is Duke Johnson on the practice squad. I don't even think that's a hot take. It's probably true.
I think I did that rant on postgame after week 2 or 3, dude.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to come to grips with it.
I think the quote was, "Put some damn respect on my man Duke Johnson. Why is everywhere he goes, just gets overlooked? They try to pigeonhole him into this, niche pass catching small running back, and everything he showed in Miami last year to me indicates he should be the number 2 running back in this offense."
I don't disagree with you, and I'm interested to see how that evolves. But running backs not named Devin Singletary. Zone runs, we got into that. We've discussed that. And number 3 is short yardage, right? If it's not Josh Allen and short yardage, do you have any confidence that the Bills are going to pick up a yard or it's some of these short yardage runs? No. And so it's those are the things to me. I mean, obviously we all want this Bills offense to be about passing the football, and I don't think the Bills rushing offense is completely dreadful. I think it's had moments. We've seen it get better throughout the course of the year in previous seasons. So I have a level of optimism there, right? This isn't the bread and butter or the identity of the football team. We want it to be effective when it needs to be effective. But look, for the most part, I think it's continued to not be reliable, and especially the short yardage stuff. That's where I don't love it. And Nate, let me pose this to you. This is a take that I've had recently, and I'm interested in your thoughts. Because this is multiple years now that we've sat here and we talked about the run game. It's just not effective. I wonder how much of this is Josh Allen's fault. Okay. And what I mean by that is because Josh Allen is who he is as a dual threat player and how good of a passer he is, teams play zone. Well, what does zone mean? It means eyes in the backfield.
Eyes in the backfield.
And so when you run the football with so many eyes in the backfield all the time, the B and C levels of the defense, they trigger quicker. And so you mentioned foot fire, right? You mentioned foot fire. The Bills don't have that at running back outside of James Cook. And right now, calculated James Cook doesn't really give you much in the way of foot fire, right? And so I just wonder, because I watched y'all 22, and I remember being at the Rams game. I was at SoFi Stadium, sitting in the end zone, and I saw a lot of movement. I saw a hat on a hat. But I saw gaps go away quick, and Moss and Singletary they just don't get there fast enough. I wonder if two things here: Josh Allen, like I talked about, his presence invites more quick triggers from the B and C level of the defense, which closes up gaps quickly, which is compounded because you don't have foot fire at running back to get through those gaps quicker. Does that pass the sniff test for you?
100%. I want to add an extra layer to that. I think it also has to do a little bit with how the offensive line has been constructed since Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane have been here. These are not guys that tend to handle, like, we talk about the inverse of this all the time with the linebackers, right? Like what would you, one of the big things we all talk about why Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano have taken the steps that they've taken and why Tremaine Edmonds is having that type of career year. Why is that, right? It's because they've got a guy in the middle now, Daquan Jones, who could take on those double teams. And it forces that extra half second for the offensive line to make sure that they're chipping, getting big on big before they get to that second level. And I think the same can be said, or the inverse can be said about this Bills team is, listen, I love Mitch Morse when you get him on the perimeter, but he's going to lose one-on-one battles against the bigger run grading, big one-techs, big zeros in the middle. And I could say the same right now. I thought we were getting a little bit more sturdiness from Saffold, but it's a 34-year-old offensive lineman. I don't know what the Bills, I hope the Bills weren't expecting to get the Pro Bowl version of Saffold. And I know I'm not totally buying into him being a Pro Bowl player. I know by namesake, he was a Pro Bowl player, but I don't know that he was actually playing at a Pro Bowl level last year. And then you have Ryan Bates, who I think is a finesse type offensive lineman. He's a guy that can, again, in the run game, get creative. You can get him out in space because he's got that foot speed. They've got guys with foot speed. They don't have road graders up front. Can I say that they slightly miss just a little bit Cody Ford? Not in the way that you would think, but like they miss his downhill ability, the ability that if there was one thing, he was a physical player. Now his feet were a mess and he really had a lot of trouble at the NFL level, but I just think that they struggle to get to the second level and seal off blocks to give them more runway. So the problem is I think these offensive linemen are catching linebackers as they begin their descent downhill. And that's a much harder player to get in front of to seal off than a player that is, right off the bat getting up to the second level. And the athleticism at the linebacker position on the inside nowadays, everyone talked about, Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard, right? Like, well, he's undersized. He can't play the middle linebacker position. Terrell Bernard is the new standard size inside. I think Tremaine Edmonds is a unicorn in that with the size and that length. So for me, I think a little bit of A, eyes are always in the backfield, but I also think B, the construction of the interior part of this offensive line, more finesse. And there's a requirement to make sure you stay an extra half second because these guys don't win big on big all the time.
Yeah, that'll be a big conversation this offseason, and
Sure will.
we're certainly going to talk a lot about some of these guards available in the NFL draft, and we're going to talk about situational football here in just a moment. But first, here's a sports analogy for you. When it comes to burglars, your home is like the end zone, and you need the absolute strongest defense you can muster. This is why I use and trust SimpliSafe Home Security. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. It's cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back, so you always know your home is safe. SimpliSafe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. You can customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. All right, Nate, let's talk situational football, third down, fourth down, red zone, and then get into some big stuff here on Christian McCaffrey and Odell Beckham Jr. First of all, third down, the Bills are the best in the league. They're converting 52.8% of their third downs. And I think you can kind of lump in fourth down to this. They're 60%. They're number 7. They're very good so far on those money downs. Got to have it. Got to convert. Any high-level thoughts that you have about those types of situations? Is it sustainable? What are you concerned about? What do you love about third and fourth downs right now?
I think there's a level of sustainability to it because of Josh Allen. I think he's just as clutch of a player. He's playing the best football of his career. And again, I was pretty convinced that last year was the height. I was pretty convinced 2022 or 2020 was the height. But it's apparent that every year he's taking some level of a stride. And third down efficiency is right there. Now, I think they could and should be better on third down. A really good example is the play on Sunday where Devin Singletary gets blown up on third down and 1. There's just a free guy coming off the offensive line. And that's not, to me, a Josh Allen problem. It's not necessarily a gaffe on the offensive line as much as it is a little bit of predictability, too, on third and short. They're almost better, Joe, in 3rd and 8 situations than they are in 3rd and 1, which is such a
insane.
weird.
Yeah.
But I think part of the 3rd and 8 situation that I think really plays in their favor is Josh Allen's willingness to throw it into windows. He's become, listen, Benjamin Solak said it and everybody got really upset, but my guy has arm arrogance.
That's a compliment.
It's
a
the
compliment in the scouting world. Like it's 100%. Not, we say that about quarterbacks that it's a good thing, but people got all pissed off. It was so ridiculous.
People like to get angry at Ben like he's not the sweetest man in all of the universe.
Right, he literally is. Yeah.
He's literally he's just a boy of God. Like that's just all he is. He'll always be a boy to me. But regardless, I digressed on the Benjamin Solak. But yeah, and that touchdown pass to Dawson Knox, the game winner, is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, is creating windows with his arm strength. And I think now, and I want to kind of go back to this too, the Beasley thing, right? Instead of throwing at the sticks and falling short because he can't turn around and make a play and make a guy miss, they're now throwing past the sticks. And I think that's been a big evolution of this offense as well. But I think what they're doing on 1st and 2nd down, to me, and they're neutral passing situations. I mean, they are just a pass happy team, but they keep teams really off kilter. And if you want to run man-to-man coverage, the Bills will run packages out to beat that. If you want to run zone coverage, the Bills will run packages out to beat that. And now that they're implementing more use of the running back in the passing game as well, too, I just think that everything that's working on third down to me screams Josh Allen's growth as a passer, his patience as a passer. But really, it's his ability to fit the ball into tight windows. If you want to run man coverage on third down, the Bills are going to run crossers down your throat, and they've got 3 guys who can get open against man. If you want to run zone coverage against the Bills on third down, and same with the other part of this too with man coverage, is Josh Allen will just run the football. I've liked that I've seen less design runs, Joe. Liked it a lot. I think he is more... There's less opportunity to get guys coming downhill at him and hitting him the way that I don't want to see him get hit in design runs when he's scrambling. And you've got defenders turned around and having to turn their attention back to him and then beat him in a foot race, which is hard to do with Josh Allen. So, I think it is interesting to me how good they've been in third and long situations and maybe how inefficient they've been in third and short, which has led them to be more aggressive than anybody in football because they're going for it in 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 3. And part of this, I think, is also a red zone issue as well, which we'll get to in a second. But I think there's a true lack of trust in the run game as a whole. So when you get in those situations, when you get in the red zone, when you're getting 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, they're looking to throw the football, not run it.
Coach Harbaugh with the Ravens, the reason that they decided to go for the touchdown and not the field goal was because he didn't want to give Josh Allen 4 downs, right? It's that simple, right?
You have to defend him an extra down more than any other team in football.
Right. Nightmare stuff, right? For a defense.
Yeah. You don't have to not try, you don't have to not believe in your defense.
Sure.
To say, I'm not putting the ball in Josh Allen's hand. You can be the Denver Broncos and make that exact same decision, because even if you hold Josh Allen to 13 points for 58 and a half minutes, all it takes is him. It takes him 35, 40 seconds, 50 seconds, and he will change a game.
Sign me up from an opponent's perspective, sign me up for death by a million paper cuts from Tom Brady in his prime, as opposed to you did everything right and Josh Allen's just not defend. He breaks every rule, right? Like that's got to be so demoralizing as an opponent. I don't have a whole lot to add there for 3rd and 4th down. I think the answer is it's just Josh Allen. Move on. Let's talk red zone, because this can get better, Nate. The Bills are 18th right now in terms of scoring touchdowns when they get across the 20, 54.5%, 12 and 22. The Bills should be a top, 5 red zone offense. You have Josh Allen.
They should be right there with Mahomes. They should be right there with Mahomes. This is the first time I'm going to take the opportunity to serve a little bit on the plate of Ken Dorsey. I have not loved the play calling when they get to goal-to-go situations. When they're at the 15-yard line, no qualms. But they get to the 1-yard line, particularly Sunday, with how effective they were in the first half running the football. They get down there, they get Singletary on first down, gets to the 3-yard line, and they go pass, 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 turnover on downs. And not every week will I believe that they should try to run the ball on the 1-yard line. Part of this is you expected to be able to lean on Zach Moss in these situations, and he has not really put up the efficiency numbers within this area. And frankly, they've moved away from him. He's obviously inactive last week. They don't have the goal line back I think that they envisioned they would have. So now with that, there's this belief, well, okay, Devin Singletary is not that guy. He can make a guy miss in a phone booth, and he can make him miss in space. But when everything gets condensed, he does not have that power to move forward. And with Josh, I think, they've ran some quarterback power near the goal line, and it's very predictable. I mean, it's just a very predictable play call for the Bills. I love the evolution of using Gabriel Davis as the Bush push guy. I'm bringing back, I'm ripping up a scab on the Bush push because, big Notre Dame fan. But I think that there's a level or a lack of trust in the run game when they get in those goal-to-go situations. That's number one. But I think that they can still try it. And you still have 2 downs with Josh Allen if you don't want to, run 2 or 3 straight down. I am not advocating they go run, turnover. But what I am saying is I'd like to see a little bit more patience with the run game when they get down to the 2-3 yard line and run behind the left side of your offensive line. Use Reggie Gilliam in these situations. Hell, use Reggie Gilliam in the run game. Use the jet sweep game with Isaiah McKenzie in those condensed areas. So I'm going to press on play calling a little bit, predictability a little bit, but also execution in those short area parts of the field. You can't have Isaiah McKenzie tripping on a fourth down play. Everyone knows this about the NFL, about the red zone. It is a particularly hard area to throw the football because of the condensed room. Peyton Manning has said it as many times as ad nauseum, right? Which is he'd rather be fourth and goal from the 15-yard line than fourth and goal from the 1 as a quarterback, because you have that room to navigate. And now teams are first step forward, but we're dropping 7 back in the red zone. Good luck. And even with the arm arrogance of Josh Allen in those tight spaces, the margin for error is that much smaller. So I think a little bit of play calling, a little bit of trust in the run game, but I think a lot of bit of execution as well.
I think you nailed it. I was going to lean into Ken Dorsey a little bit here, but it's tough. It's tough in the red zone, and I think your point about Zach Moss not being what they thought has impacted that. And I think really James Cook and Zach Moss not being what they thought has impacted a lot of our conversation when we get into the what's not working components of this offense through 6 games at the bye. Hey, let's close on some Christian McCaffrey, Odell Beckham Jr. conversation. It's impossible to ignore. What's your appetite, Nate? Are you sitting here saying, man, the Bills need to go get one or both of these guys and really go all in on this year? Or do you not have that same level of urgency?
It's hard. I don't think it's a black and white, yes or no sort of situation, as much as we all want it to be. The thing, and my biggest issue with Odell Beckham is, yes, I would love nothing more. Odell Beckham's free, doesn't cost you a future asset. And I think he's a 3-wide set with Diggs, Davis, and OBJ is about as difficult to defend philosophically and ideally very difficult to defend. But I just don't know what you're getting with Odell Beckham Jr.
100%. Yeah.
You're not signing Odell Beckham Jr. to a 3-year deal. You're signing Odell Beckham to a 1-year, come in here, restore your value, and good luck in the future deal. And I'm not sure that's what Odell Beckham Jr. wants. I think Odell Beckham Jr. wants to go to a place where he's got growth potential. He can grow within an offense, not spend, 4 weeks of the regular season acclimating and then a couple of playoff games and then see you later. And I think that's going to be the biggest obstacle between his marriage and the Bills. Is I think the Bills are taking the same stance the Los Angeles Rams are taking, which is we'd love to have you, but we're not interested in a 3 or 4 year deal. We're not interested in a deal with term. We're interested in giving you some money up front, but a team friendly deal and something in a situation to allow you to restore your value league wide. And I think if you're the Chiefs, I think if you're the Green Bay Packers, you can offer him a little more long-term stability and the opportunity to be the number 1 wide receiver. He's coming to Buffalo. He's the number 3 guy. I mean, that's that. And is he okay with that role? And does he believe he can build value in that role? I think those are fair questions to ask. And that's why I think my attention is turned to a guy like Christian McCaffrey almost exclusively.
Let me stop you there, Nate. Because I can fit in my Odell Beckham thoughts quickly, and we can collaboratively move on to CMC. For Odell, I think there is a reality check that you have to have here. He's going to be healthy and ready to go in like December. What are you really getting? You're talking about onboarding a player to your passing game. There's timing, there's chemistry, there's a lot to figure out before that turns into a meaningful piece of what you can do moving forward. And how much time do you want to commit to that, right? How much time do you want to commit to that becoming a thing for you? And also, what are you getting, right? I mean, he tore his ACL in February. We've seen what it's taken for Trey White to get back and for the team to be comfortable with him. What are you actually getting? He's not going to play special teams.
Nope.
And so can he legitimately come in immediately and become a meaningful wide receiver 3 for this offense? I have severe questions about that. And if he's wanting the longer term commitment, how do you make that work? How do you say that this is what we have to do and continue to push Poyer to the back burner and Edmonds to the back burner and even Singletary? Like, there's a lot to consider there. So I don't have a whole lot of urgency with Odell. If they do it, then there's some level of understanding that I will buy into, but I'm not sitting here right now saying you got to get this guy.
I'm with you. Again, I would be thrilled. I think it would be a great addition. But I think, listen, do I think Christian McCaffrey fixes all of the issues with the run game? I do not. I think there are more fundamental issues at play that not even elite style runner like Christian McCaffrey can solve. But the yards after catch and those dump downs to running backs, I find as an area I may be most interested in. The areas of as a pass catcher, I think undoubtedly there's a lot of value for me. But Christian McCaffrey is a sneaky good between the tackles runner. And that's where his big plays come from. He's not a guy necessarily that you're going to see turn around and run a lot of zone, outside zone and sweep. He is a tactician between the tackles. Yep. He is not a run you over guy. He has a better understanding of leverage than running backs I've seen play this game.
Make your
for a
blocks
long time.
right.
Yeah. And how to read a block and how to use leverage against the defender and set guys up when there's open space. And that's why Christian McCaffrey to me makes so much sense. And the money figure is right for me. The question is, can you make him work for the final 2 years of his contract? And I think that's really the big question here, because are you trading a second round, a third round pick for a guy that is a rental? I don't believe that to be a smart move, right? And so that's why, like, I've started to think, okay, well, maybe Christian McCaffrey's the wrong piece to talk about. Maybe Antonio Gibson is the right piece to talk about. Maybe there's another piece out there that's available, Cam Akers, right? And I'm not loving the idea of Cam Akers. I think he's lost a lot of the explosiveness. I think Achilles injuries are really the worst possible thing for a running back. So I think for me, it's Christian McCaffrey and Antonio Gibson. And to me, it's McCaffrey, but can you find the right package for McCaffrey? And I don't believe, this because you're there in Charlotte, but like, I think that there's a real case to be made that the Carolina Panthers are detached from reality and understanding value across the league. And I think they settled. I think they were ready to get rid of Robbie Anderson. They weren't getting more than that, even if Robbie Anderson forced his way off the field. Yeah. They are in crazy town if they believe that they're going to get a first-round pick for Christian McCaffrey. Could they get a first-round pick for Brian Burns? Sure, but that would be the dumbest thing that franchise could do, is trade an elite-level edge pass rusher. Terrible move. I would be willing, Joe, and maybe this is the most I'd be willing to do, is a third-round pick this year and a fourth-round pick next year. A day 2 and a day 3 pick. I think that would be an overpayment, but I think I would be willing to do that with the idea that right now his year 2 and year 3 are the 2 years outside of this year, his contract, are a freaking disaster because of the restructure. So I don't know what you do. Do you try to reformat? Do you try to re-sign him to a better team-friendly deal? I think you might have to do that. But to me, it does not make sense, Joe, to pay a third and a fourth, or to pay whatever it's going to cost to get McCaffrey here, unless you can find a way to creatively keep him for another year or two. It does not make sense to me to move those types of picks for a running back as a 7, 8, 15 game rental. I'm sorry, 7, 8, 10 game rental.
Yeah, it's confusing to me as well. In terms of what you'd give up, I think you look at precedent, and there's not a whole lot of running back trades of this caliber. Nope. And honestly, the two that you throw the Trent Richardson trade out, that's nobody cares about that. That was a ridiculous deal. It's Willis McGahee and Marshawn Lynch, right? Those were the two most comparable situations. You're talking about a couple of mid-round picks. I think that's where you settle in on what you give up. But yeah, how do you make it work from a cap perspective? Doesn't make sense. I know this year it's not a whole lot to absorb. Right. Like $700K, that's not a concern. But yes, I think the long term is where you start to ask yourself questions. And if you make this trade, then you're basically saying, okay, Christian McCaffrey, you're going to be a running back for the next 2-3 years. And that's okay, right? But is this the dollars you want to tie up into the position? Maybe. I know that Brandon Beane was part of the regime that drafted him, and he's called Christian McCaffrey a sleep good at night pick. But I think there's bigger questions here. And can you get 75% of what you thought you were getting from Christian McCaffrey and Duke Johnson without having to give up the draft capital or commit the cap space? I might be willing to find out, Nate.
I was going to say, I'm willing to find out. I am willing to find out.
So I'm not sitting here saying like no and going to be mad if it happens, but I'm not sitting here saying you got to do it. Yeah. I can't get myself there on the Christian McCaffrey stuff.
It's why I want to maybe bring back the point on the Antonio Gibson move, because it will cost you nothing. He's on his rookie deal, and he's a guy that is a former receiver. He's got the things I'm looking for with a little bit more bang for the buck. But
We're talking late pick though here. I mean,
Yes.
5th, 6th round pick, he's not a big needle mover for me. I like the idea of him. There's some positive things there, but fumbling's been an issue. I don't think he's very nuanced between the tackles runner. Do you get a little bit more explosive Zach Moss with receiving skill? I don't know. Yeah. It's unfortunate that Moss and Cook haven't been what they need them to be, because that's your answers, right? You're just looking for other players not named Moss and Cook to do the things you wanted them to do, right? Because you had the skill sets you wanted.
And you can look at the Bills' schedule right now. They're going to have opportunities, Joe, to give James Cook an opportunity, for lack of a better word, to cook, right? Like he's going to have opportunities here in the next couple of weeks after the bye week. I thought the Pittsburgh game was an important opportunity for him to show, even if it's not against starters, or if maybe you don't have starters in, but I think there's some opportunities on the schedule coming up for him to go into a game situation where they don't have to feel like they're putting him out there in situation they may not be able to trust him. So I'm not ready, and I know you're not either. I know most people aren't ready to turn the page on James Cook. But I think he's going to get some opportunities here in the next couple of weeks to prove that you can trust me. You can give me more opportunities. And I hope he's able to take advantage of those.
Yeah, that was my biggest gripe about the 30. What did the Bills beat Pittsburgh by? It was 38-3 or something crazy like that. I'm like, yeah, I could have done without the 5 Case Keenum passing attempts and just had more James Cook rushing.
James Cook.
You hate to nitpick, but it's like, wow, there was your chance. I mean, give him the ball. So, we'll find out. And look, nobody should be dismissing James Cook. If there's anything that this regime has taught us, because people dismiss Josh Allen, they dismiss Dawson Knox, missed Tremaine Edmonds, right? Come on, development's been absolutely a thing. Even at Oliver, right? It's just been guy after guy. So don't fall into it, and look at what this team has proven. It just hasn't been there yet, and there's probably something to be said for James Cook and the role that he had at Georgia. I mean, he didn't get a ton of carries and touches, right? I mean, this isn't a guy that's has a ton of experience. And I know that we say he played in the SEC and his brother's Dalvin Cook. Well, all right. I mean, my dad could build houses. I can't do that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that there's a whole lot that we should glean from that. But Nate, I thought we'd go 30 minutes. Here we are pushing an hour. So you've been gracious with your time. I should have known. And I'm sure we'll talk again before the bye week next year, but
absolutely.
Make sure everyone follows Nate on Twitter at Nate Geary Sports. Sports Talk Saturday, right on WGR 550. Food for thought. What else you got to tell people about?
Pre-half, post-game. I'll be doing network pre-game and post-game for Sunday Night Football, so excited about that. That's about it, man. That's about all I have time for. So
appreciate you, Nate. For everyone else, thank you for tuning in. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. We're gonna have a conversation just like this with Bruce Nolan, focusing on the defense. Get the Greg Thompson talking big picture stuff here as we get through the bye week here and get some different voices on the podcast and bounce some ideas around. For Nate Geary, I'm Joe Marino. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.